All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to the cybersecurity digital engagement event, right? Where today we'll be learning a little bit more about cybersecurity and what that looks like. My name is Camila and I am the program manager here at the Knowledge House. I work really closely with the recruitment team here. You've probably received a couple emails from me already regarding the application process to get into our program. With that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Isa to introduce themselves.
Hello, hello guys. I'm Isa. I'm coming from Queens, New York. I'm a cybersecurity analyst at Huntress. So it's nice to meet everybody.
Thank you so much. So today, I'll be asking Isa a couple of questions just to get to a better feel about what cybersecurity is, what that looks like, and the pathways there. And of course, there will be time for you all to ask some questions as well and learn more about our tracks. So of course, I want to start off by asking you, Isa, what is cybersecurity really? Like, what does that really look like? And how does that show up in our everyday lives?
Good question. So cybersecurity originated from InfoSec, which is information security, and it's a new developing field for these past few years, especially the last 5 years. And it's all about protecting your network and your livelihood on the internet. Now that every device is IoT connected to the internet, it's more important than ever to protect yourself, basically, in cyberspace. So there, cybersecurity emerges.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And when we think of cybersecurity, kind of where can I see that showing up on my everyday, right? Like cybersecurity seems like a really heavy term, but where are some ways where I can definitely see as like an everyday person it pulling up for me?
That's a good question. Cybersecurity for the average person is all about practicing good cyber hygiene. And that's trying to understand that things that are valuable to you, making sure they're protected. First thing you think of is bank accounts and accounts that have personal information. It's always good to practice good cyber hygiene, changing your passwords, making your passwords hard that they're not able to guess. But also, as we step into the new day, we understand that a lot of our devices are connected to internet, from our laptop to our, Alexa, if you have it in the house, some people's doorbells and doorknobs, cameras throughout the house. They're usually always connected to internet. It's always to protect, your devices, because sometimes your ignorance could be a vulnerability, and in your network, and you end up sharing more than you need to on the internet. So it's good to practice cyber hygiene, and it's just in our everyday life around us.
Awesome. And can you tell me, now that you work in the cybersecurity field, like what does your day-to-day look like? What are you doing? What's that like?
Most definitely. And I'll definitely get into during my presentation. But to start off, I'm more than grateful to work a remote life. And to be very honest and be very frank, cybersecurity, emerging field, and to say it short, like a lot of people don't understand tech and cybersecurity. So you have to be a professional in that space. And it's a very demanding job, but also at the same time, it's very rewarding in the sense that it's a demanding field. It obviously pays well. And in addition to that, it's what that job might look like specifically. You spend a lot of time on the computer. You have to be a great researcher in cybersecurity, because technically, you don't really know everything, and it's impossible to know everything on the computer. It's impossible to know everything that happens on a computer, in a network. So although I'm a professional in the space, I nowhere believe that I'm a professional when it comes to cyberspace. So you definitely have to be a great researcher all around.
Awesome, thank you. And what do you think roles and opportunities really look like in this field?
Well, like I said, cybersecurity is an emerging field, and every day a department figures out a way to create a new role. When I first started cybersecurity, I looked at it like, man, I just want to stop hackers. And that's what I'm doing today. But as I joined a cybersecurity team and a threat ops center, I realized that I'm literally just 5% of what makes up cybersecurity. You might have heard I'm part of the blue team. There's a red team. There's a purple team. Apparently there's a yellow orange team. I couldn't tell you what that is, but I'm definitely sure that it's an important place in cybersecurity. Basically, you know, blue team is off defensive. Red team is offensive, and purple team lies somewhere in the middle or nothing at all. So it's all about finding your niche in this space.
Awesome, thank you. And I think a question I really want to ask you is, when did you realize cybersecurity was something for you, right? Was this something you noticed like at a young age, something maybe later on, or is it something that just was like always something you were interested in?
Well, definitely. I can tell you right now, I was not always interested in cybersecurity. I really just stumbled upon it. But as I got into cybersecurity, I learned that it's always been a part of my life. As a gamer, I always came up on, you know, the generation of having a computer from AOL to now. I never really thought I would be in this field. So in 2020, I actually was working in the music industry. So 2021 was a big year for me because I'm like, I'm going to break into cybersecurity some way. And it was definitely possible. And I did it. But I never really seen it, but it wasn't until I got into the field that I began to understand that, you know, cyberspace is all around us. Making sure you're protected and secure is really important. And like I said, it's an emerging field. Once you're learning, it's best to give back to other people to understand, so they can understand what we're dealing with in cyberspace.
Of course. And it's really great to hear, right, that it wasn't something that you were always super engaged in, right? It wasn't something that like you went to school for necessarily, but something that actually just came up for you a little bit later. And of course, that makes me ask you, how did you get into cybersecurity, right? Like, how did you really step into that field and really pick up the skills that are needed to be a part of it?
That's right. I want to first start by saying I wanted to get into cybersecurity so bad. I was willing to pay for a course and do a certification. That was like $5,000 until I came across a mentor. And I think that's a big thing in this space. You really want someone to sponsor your way through, not financially, but just, you know, to drop some knowledge for you. Basically, I got into this space through IT. I think that's a great way to break in, through help desk. It's really important that you understand the fundamentals of, you know, technology, basically, how computers communicate with each other, what a network looks like, what a router is, because in this field, the smartest person is always going to win, and not a genius, but when a hacker, you know, breaks into your network, they're going to have to understand the network more than you do to understand a vulnerability. So when you have your network, or you're protecting someone else's network, it's important to be knowledgeable in that space. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I recommend going into IT because I graduated Rutgers University in 2020 with a criminal justice major, and I actually had no technical experience. So I knew that I had to play a lot of catch up. And I was lucky enough to be hired by IT company in March of 2021. And that just really exploded my experience in cyberspace. I started to learn how computers communicate with each other. Also learning the application level, understanding how to navigate through computer files. That's super important. And once you learn those basic fundamentals, you know more than 90% of people. And honestly, you know more than 50% of hackers, because there's a lot of automated tools that even hackers aren't geniuses. So that's the biggest thing. I got in through IT, and I recommend it for everybody, for sure.
100%. Is there anything that you think you would do differently now that you're in the cybersecurity field and kind of have some experience in it now?
Anything I would do differently? I would go back in college and study computer science. Because well, for a very obvious reason, I would have a leg up. It would have made joining a lot easier. However, looking back, no regrets, because I'm here now, right? You got to make your situation work best. One thing that I personally didn't like when I wanted to break in cybersecurity, people always tell me, go get a certification, you know, and I always looked at these certification tracks, and they take a year or so on, or something like that. And I was studying for that certification, but there was that pressure that I had to take this exam, and then that pressure, I take this exam, I pass, I have a year, and then I got to look for a job. I think personally, no regrets. I think you should start applying as soon as possible. You know, you don't understand your true potential until you actually get into the door. And then someone is like, well, you're actually a genius. And I spent a lot of time studying for the Security Plus as I was trying to look for a job. However, I never got it, but I did read the CompTIA book front and back. But it really relieved the pressure when you understand your potential and understand that it's not about certifications. It's not about your degree. It's not even about where you're coming from. It's about your knowledge at the end of the day. You know, your interview, chances are going to be a technical interview, but you got to understand maybe like the 7 layers, just how computers communicate with each other. And like I said, just knowing that, you know more than 90% of your competition. So that's the truth right there.
No, 100%. I totally agree. And I think something that you hit on too, right? It's really thinking about where you really want to go with it, right? And making sure that you're making yourself really knowledgeable and seeing what the field is going to be like. Did you have any mentors when you were doing this, or do you have any mentors now that supported you?
For sure. And I have more than one mentor. You can never have enough mentors. I have a lot of mentors and I met them all on LinkedIn. So I broke into cybersecurity or in IT cyberspace through the pandemic. So it was not easy meeting up with people. And it first starts with just connecting with people, looking at the jobs that you want, the field that you want to be in, the titles you want to be in, and using LinkedIn as a way, or any social media as a way to reach out and ask questions that you might have today. I encourage everyone to reach out to me and I'll try my best to answer any questions, but that's the biggest thing. You definitely need a mentor in this space because it will relieve a lot of stress, but also answer questions that you didn't even know you had a question about. That's another big thing. Mentors, and also there is a lot of organizations, especially minority organizations in cybersecurity, that will fund your certification, follow you from day one to get a job, look at your resume, recommend you. I definitely recommend finding those organizations. I definitely could recommend some, from Black Girls Hack to Blacks in Cybersecurity. They have really paved the way for a lot of people in cybersecurity, especially minorities, and I credit them a lot. They host classes every day. And that just takes away from the point. You don't need a certification. You need a strong network and great background knowledge, basically.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to share, Greg did just join us, one of our other presenters tonight. So just want to share that out. Welcome, Greg. And we'll have you on our screen in just a second. Thank you so much. So what I was just asking Greg, was asking him about his mentors, but actually, could you just do a quick introduction about yourself and what you do?
No, thanks. So I'm Greg Kyrytschenko. I head up security services at Guardian Life. I've been there for about 6 years, but I've been in the security industry for over 20, which is crazy to say at this point. A lot of my responsibilities revolve around making sure that we are operating and engineering our security as best as we possibly can. Guardian's a 106-year-old life insurance company that we've been transforming and moving in kind of a modernization effort and transformation effort over the past 7 to 8 years. So definitely been a very exciting time there, but also with the current threat landscape, it's been an evolving type of place. And I cover basically all of operations from a threat perspective, vulnerability perspective, incident response, our cyber defense center, our identity access management, and security engineering platforms. And really the whole goal of my team and the structure of my team is to make sure that we're making sure that we maintain the security of the organization by protecting our customers' data, but also providing a good quality security experience for all of our customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thanks.
And so what we were just actually talking about was mentors. So if you could maybe share out your experience with mentoring as you got into the cybersecurity field, or even up to now.
Sure. So I still have mentors to this day. So a lot of my decision making, and I would tell you, mentors can come in and out of your life at various times, but it's really a relationship that you establish with folks early on in your career, or potentially could be now it's at any time. There's no time for when you need a mentor versus not. it's really a person that you can confide in and be able to bounce ideas off of. So I've had mentors through the past 20 plus years of being in the workforce, but I may not talk to a mentor for a year, or it could be a couple of years. But it's always, somebody that I value. And it's not just, cyber. It could be in just,
Right.
Anything in life. It could be things from a professional perspective, things that can kind of help coach you through tough times. So it's just having that person to confide in, to be able to bounce ideas off of that can give you a different perspective, and a person who's not going to just tell you what you want to hear. That's the other big thing from a mentor perspective, because sometimes people just get mentors that are always going to tell them that everything is great, and that's not always the case. Sometimes you need to have the hard truth, and sometimes the hard truth is not always easy to swallow, but it's always been you respect your mentor, so you're going to value their opinion, and that sometimes can trigger something for you to be thinking about something a little bit differently than what you may have been going in assuming. Because I think different perspectives, we're making decisions and navigating through the ebbs and flows of life is very, very valuable. So for me, I can say I have mentors all over the place, and my LinkedIn network is pretty full with a lot of them. So it's usually I use my network pretty well, and I would tell anybody who's here listening tonight to make sure that when you look at your mentors, make sure that they're people that you either aspire to be with, or be around, but also to be able to bounce, that you can bounce things off of, especially when you have an interesting decision to make, whether it's to go one direction or another, or to totally do a 180 on something. So that's kind of me from a mentorship perspective, and kind of where I've leveraged mentors, and some of my mentors are friends. It doesn't mean that they're just, because they have the label of mentor, doesn't mean that they're they can't be your friend. I have mentors that are younger than me. I have mentors that are way older than me. So there's no kind of quality to be a mentor. It's just, it's kind of a label that we put on folks to be able to help, get you over the hump. So.
I definitely agree. And that also actually is something that we really focus on here at the Knowledge House, right? And that's something I really want to highlight. Our programs for all of our students, we try to make sure that everyone is secured with a mentor. So they have someone who's supporting them throughout the year, because we know it's difficult, right? It's a full year program. So you want to make sure that you have someone who has experience in the field, or in just professionally, providing you with that support, whether it comes to those technical interviews, right? Those mock interviews, resume cover letters, or having your portfolio ready, right? And just really being aware of kind of what the environment is, right? And being able to have someone that you're asking those questions to. And that's something we really do highlight very heavily in our program. So that's definitely something to really keep in mind that the Knowledge House does, because a lot of other organizations or other coding programs don't do that. And that's something to really, of course, as Isa and Greg have said, to really take advantage of. I have a mentor. Of course, I'm not in the field, but mentors are something that is just super important for you as a professional and as you're developing to really have. So really taking advantage of that while you're in this program is something to definitely highlight. Greg, I actually want to ask you if you could kind of just speak a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like, and what kind of got you to where you are now.
Sure. So, what I've been doing security. So I watched a movie a long time ago called War Games, for those who have, can remember that, or even were even born at that point. But it was a movie I saw like really early on that made me want to go ahead and kind of protect computer systems. And when I saw that, that movie when I was growing up, it was something I said, hey, this would be kind of a cool career field. So let me see kind of where I can be and where my career takes me. When I first started, I started in credit card fraud, which is kind of a start, but it was something. And when I worked there, they helped put me through school, which was a great experience, and then gave me exposure to a lot of different things. And your career never goes exactly the way you always plan it. It's not just a straight linear line, and I'm a college professor as well. So I tell my students all the time that it's going to ebb and flow, and there's going to be times when, it's not exactly how you expect it to be. It's not always a linear, incline to the top. You may have to take a step down or take a step back or sideways or or backwards in order to kind of to move forward. So when I worked at the bank, going to school and put myself through school, I learned cybersecurity, or started getting into what was called information security at the time. And when I got to that level, I just continue to just want to grow and learn things. The reason why I like security is I'm always learning something. It's always something that I can be teaching myself. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think that's one of the biggest things if you're in the career field of cybersecurity, that you have to kind of at least acknowledge and agree with and at least aspire to. So if you like to learn, you like the knowledge pieces, which is right up my alley. I got opportunities to grow, and when I didn't have the opportunities where I was, I ended up leaving a company to go ahead and get the next opportunity. So every place that I went in my career journey was to help me to get to the next step. So in one of the things in security is it's so broad now. It's not just when I was first getting into security, it was more chasing around viruses on a floppy disk, which I'm not sure if everybody knows what a floppy disk is, but that was my job way back when, which was not which is what it's totally transformed from where it is today. And with that in mind, it was definitely very, very antiquated, and it's gotten a lot more complex. And at that point, we've gotten a lot more digital, so there's a lot more things to be able to cover. And every job responsibility that I took throughout my career, and I've been to I think 6 companies so far in my career so far, has been to learn something different, and to try something different, because at the end of the day, life is short, but you want to be able to get as many experiences as possible. And I'm a person that likes to be impactful and make change, and positive change, right? One of the big things that I always say to any of my students or my employees or anybody I work with is I try to leave the place a better place than when I found it. And the more you can kind of focus on, building a better place, the better world that you're actually building. And in cybersecurity, one of the key things, within cyber is to make sure that you're protecting data, you're protecting customers, you're protecting people. And now that things are becoming more and more technology advanced, you want to say, you want to be able to make sure that if you're in control of cybersecurity, or you're managing cybersecurity, or you're an engineer or an analyst, whatever the role is, your responsibility is to make sure you're keeping people safe, because technology is a totally different dynamic than what it was way back when. So what I've done it along the way is just to make sure I understand it, also understand history. How did it get to the way it was? As I look at my security career, I've always been kind of a fan of history, because history helps you to not create the same mistakes again, or try to avoid the same mistakes again. And a lot of my students, whenever I'm teaching at the college, they always ask me, why do you always give us history lessons? And it's because, I'm trying to make sure you don't repeat the same mistakes that I did or other people did, so that you don't fall victim in that way. And I think, the big thing about cybersecurity is blending everything together and kind of taking all these different disciplines and trying to create something special and impactful. And for me personally, it's been a very rewarding career. I've met a lot of great people along the way, and continue to meet a lot of great people along the way. And I think the big thing is the security industry has gotten a lot larger, but it's still a very small industry. So you always want to, if you're leaving a job or going to a new job, you don't forget the friends that you're leaving from one company, or you're making new ones, and also establishing potential alliances and kind of having those broker, the broker conversations of how to go ahead and do it better, because there's not a silver bullet to solve security problems. And the more that people can recognize those, what those things are, the better off that a lot of companies will be in that type of position. Because one of the big things in IT is the ego, and everybody thinks that they kind of know everything. But when you can admit to yourself that you don't know everything, that's when a lot of the magic happens and the power happens, because that's when people will be very forthcoming and giving of information, and people want to help people don't just want to say, hey, I'm just staying in my lane. So they the more you can kind of be able to give a helping hand, you're going to see that those relationships will definitely go ahead and pay off in the, in the benefit. So as I've moved from different companies, I've always looked at it as an opportunity to be able to help, grow other people. So a lot of the students that I teach, either I've hired them or I've worked with them in the past, and it's more because it's better to help people than to kind of hold people back. And the reason why people hold people back is usually due to insecurities. And I look at it as more as a how do you inspire people, inspire to do greatness, and the more you can do that, the better off you're going to go ahead and build for a company and even for a security organization. So one of the big things that I did when I joined Guardian is I noticed that a lot of people were in stovepipes, and if you're familiar with that term, it means very isolated and not talking to one another. So as I was going through my journey at Guardian and every company I've been to, is the more you can collaborate, the better off you're going to be. Because a lot of the bad actors that are out there, they're collaborating way better than your companies are. They're not talking, your companies aren't talking to one another. And the one thing I said to folks is the more you can establish your internal networks, who you can talk to when you have a question. We all use modern communications. We all have cell phones. We all have Microsoft Teams or Zoom or different technologies. But use a tool that you have at your disposal to hopefully be able to defend off a cyber attack or a cyber event. And by building that collaboration, as a manager, as a leader, has been rather intriguing, because I saw a team of about 25, 30 people. It's grown to about 50 people over time, about 60 people. But we have teams that are across the globe that are constantly in communication with one another, which is really great, because that means everything is, and there's always opportunities to improve it for sure. But it's, make sure that communication is there, and that line of communication to be able to reach out and say, hey, I need a helping hand. And people will go ahead and give you that helping hand. You just have to be able to ask the question. And I always position as there's never a stupid question, but the more you can help people be comfortable asking tough questions, the better off you're going to get, and you're also going to be able to sense things a little bit better as well. So for kind of summing it all up from a career perspective, you learn a lot of things along the way, and you don't just jump into a role and say, hey, I'm going to be perfect at this. You just got to recognize that you're always building, you're always improving, and the moment you stop developing and building yourself is the kind of time you start kind of dying your career. So you always want to be kind of learning and assessing where you are, and being able to self-reflect on where you are, where you want to be, and then to the point on mentors, making sure you have those mentors to be able to bounce ideas of how do you get to the next step. And if you don't have a mentor that kind of meets that certain skill set or that criteria, search for it. It's out there. And people, like I said, will want to give people helping hands. It's just how do you approach it, and how do you ask the question? So.
Right, 100%. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And this is a question I actually have for you both. Can you tell us about maybe a setback or an obstacle you may have had to overcome while in your pathway, whether that may be just a general obstacle, or maybe conflict with mentor or someone who you were working with, maybe a manager or something like that. What was that obstacle like, and how did you overcome it?
If you don't mind, I'll start first. Breaking into the industry was an obstacle within itself. I felt like every job application required 5 years of experience for an entry-level job. That was discouraging. However, like I said before, you have to be confident in yourself. You have to leverage your experience to every job application. A lot of these job applications are written by someone in human resources outside of cybersecurity. You have to be confident within yourself and understand, like, hey, they require maybe 2 years of, I don't know, IT or cyber experience, and you only have one. I think you should still apply for the job. There was a point in time when I was applying that I was discouraged, but my mentor made sure to look over my resume and pointed out that I had longer experience than I expected. And I have to understand, like, just because they're asking for 3 years of experience, but you only have 2 or 1, you might know everything else they're asking for. So it's really just stay confident in yourself, but also study the things that they might be asking for and really leverage your experience that way. So that was something that really hindered my ability at first. Like, there's 3 years of experience, 5 years of experience, where am I going to get that? So yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, it was more persistence and confidence are the other things you got to make sure you have. You're not always going to get every single job. And I think, the big thing to think about when you're starting off in your career, getting started is, I applied for my first security job and was like told, no, you're not ready for it. And that was fine, because that was basically fuel for me to go ahead and learn what I had to learn to be that much better. So I always take, feedback as not a criticism that you can't do it, but more, these are things you got to work on. And, I think the benefit that's out there now is there's so much information out there. There's so many things that you can learn to get better at security, at anything, quite honestly. Like LinkedIn is a treasure trove of information. Google is my best friend. Like I literally, if there's anything I need, like I can Google it, I can find out what I need to do. There might be a do-it-yourself YouTube video. Be resourceful. Like there's a lot of just different tools that are out there available. And, not to date myself, but I will, but like I had to go to the card catalog to go ahead and find things, or had to go to, the library to find things. We have all this power right with our cell phones. Like all you need is a Google search from, your Chrome browser or wherever you are, and you can find a lot of different things out. Then you have to piece it all together. And as you piece it all together, then that gives you the momentum to really start to gain momentum and gain opportunities to get to where you need to be. So what I typically have done, and one of the big things that I look for when I'm hiring is not just that you have, because you can learn anything, but the big thing is it's your aptitude to learn, your willingness to accept that you're not going to know everything, but you're going to be resourceful enough to find it. And the more you can find, the better off the quicker you're able to find the information, the better off you can be effective in your job. And it's not just that you have 3 years of experience or 5 years of experience. It's more demonstrate to me that you have the aptitude and the confidence and the ability to go ahead and do that. And that's really the people that I shine for, like that I will go to bat for. So if I have a person who has drive, determination, and curiosity, I'll take that person over somebody who has 15 years of experience, because quite honestly, those are things that you can't, as a character, you can't go ahead and put into a person who has 15 years but has a huge ego. So it's really making sure that you're selfless, but you're also helping, and helping others. And as I see that from folks that work for me, because at the end of the day, we're all, you're working for a company, you're working for a team. And, if you've ever played a sport before or even participated in a sport, everybody has their role and their position, but the ones that do well are the ones that can kind of help each other out. And that's really the better piece of working in a team. As opposed to kind of just going there and say, hey, I've got all these credentials and, I should be entitled to get this job. I think it's more of, showing and being able to demonstrate that you can be, very, very successful in that role. And, going there with a plan, I think, is the other big thing. So like my plan when I didn't get the first security job that I applied for was, okay, I established my plan. And I was like, all right, within 30 days, I want to learn this and I want to learn that, and build that plan out. And where you have mentors, use your mentors to go ahead and help bounce ideas off. As Issa said, ask what are skills that you need to work on. And the other big thing is soft skills. Like the soft skills are huge, where you could be approachable and able to be talked with is a really, really important thing. Because if a person can't, if you can't communicate well together, and there's conflict, that always causes a challenge too, where somebody may not be confident, or you come off the wrong way, and that can also slow or and add a blocker in there. And I remember when I first went in there, I was kind of like, I was overconfident, I was cocky, and like that's when I realized, like, I need to change. And it's that self-reflection that really, I think, helped me as part of my career to get to where I am right today. And again, there's still things that I work on regularly to go ahead and improve myself and help others, because I think the more people can recognize it, the better off it's going to be for the grand scale. So.
Thank you so much. And I do see we have a couple questions in chat, so I'm going to wrap mine up. I'm loving this engagement, so definitely going to push it that way. But I want to ask you two, of course, why do you think someone should choose a knowledge house to get started in cybersecurity?
I'll go ahead and start. I recently learned the Knowledge House was free. I believe that on your road to a cybersecurity career, you shouldn't pay for anything. The knowledge is all online. There's a lot of people that are willing to help you to get in this field. It's very unfortunate that people pay upwards of $5,000 for a boot camp that doesn't promise a job at the end of it. I think if you stay persistent and you continue to educate yourself every day, the Knowledge House is a perfect place to start. You know, a free resource. There's a lot of free resources out there, and I think you should take advantage of them in cybersecurity.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is the network you're building here. So the big thing is every single person in all these different tiles that I'm looking at on my screen, like you guys should all be networking with each other. You guys are all kind of, if you guys are all starting in cybersecurity, you're all at the ground level. So you're all interested in it, which is great. Then it's more of building that network and building that capability to scale yourself. So it's, you know, say Issa gets a job and he's like, all right, I've got this new job and I need to hire 3 people, but there's this whole network that's right here on the screen. Say, okay, I need to hire 3 people. And then there's like, okay, now you move to the next job. So, and it's keeping a good positive attitude about it, to be able to use that network, to use that, you know, that skill set of people to help drive that. And again, it's more of who do you jive with, who do you align with, and, you know, be able to have that opportunity to be able to work together. And, you know, the Knowledge House brings that network together, which has, you guys are all have, you know, a common interest. And whenever there's a common interest, there's definitely more power in that to go ahead and be able to make a positive impact. So I would say, you know, the networking aspect is one of the biggest things that I've leveraged in my career. Like most of my jobs, I've not gone through any recruiters. I think one I applied online and I got that one, but the most of the jobs I've had in the past 15 years have been through people I know. So it's, you know, I know somebody says, hey, I need a role. I've done a good job at some place. You know, your reputation is something you need to value and need to protect with, you know, everything you possibly can. And make sure that, you know, nothing tarnishes your reputation. And because I have a good positive reputation and a good work ethic, like that's been the reason why I've been tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, Greg, I've got a role for you. Why don't you take a try at it? And, you know, it's like, I may not know everything, but that's where the whole resourcefulness piece comes in. And that's been able to help me along the way. And I would say for folks here, if there's something that, you know, one person knows that another person doesn't know, you know, be able to bounce it off, don't bounce the ideas off of, you know, like I said, people are willing to give out information to be able to help one another. And I think the more that people can do that and get out of that comfort zone, sometimes of being like, I have to know everything, that's when the bigger impact is going to happen. So, and I think this group can definitely go ahead and, you know, provide that opportunity.
I definitely agree.
Awesome. Thank you both. With that being said, I'm going to switch over to the chat and start asking out some of our questions.
Cool.
So Ramsey, who's actually from our cybersecurity cohort right now, I do want to share that right now with our participants. We had our cybersecurity here right now, cohort here right now. So they're actually actively right now supposed to be in class, but their instructor let them join the session. So this is really awesome opportunity. So I really want y'all to take a second to really ask questions in your chat, even if it's about the Knowledge House, because you'll be able to gain really great perspective, not just from me as a program manager or from CESAT or Chatundra, community engagement specialist, but from the students themselves. So Ramsey asked, what would you project the next trend would be in the next 2 to 5 years regarding the virtual reality, and how can cybersecurity contribute to it?
Do you want to take that one, Issa? Or?
That's a very good question, but yeah, you could handle that first.
Okay, sure. So I think as we move towards metaverse and virtual reality, I think there's going to be, how do you ensure that program, the integrity of the data that's being displayed stays accurate? Also, how do you keep people's, you know, personal interests, engaged, and also kind of keeping things secure. So for example, you know, a lot of people are using the Oculus glasses, and, you know, your kids may have, or my kid has one. But it's also like, how do you make sure and keep the right tone in those games and who you're interacting with? So there's a lot of kind of age requirements that may actually be in there. So you may have a person who's 30 and a 10-year-old who's in there, and how do you ensure that you're mixing the right people? You know, how do you keep child predators away from kids? There's a lot of things in the virtual reality space that I think we used to have more at the keyboard level, but now it's also it's brought even closer to you, because it's with something you see and kind of something you experience. So how do you keep, you know, that level of innocence, you know, for children, and kind of the privacy aspects really in there? So I think going forward from a cyber perspective, the opportunity is huge. I think, not everybody has, virtual reality and understands it yet. And I think it's going to continue to evolve over the next couple of years. But I think, the first level is just making sure that we've got the basic guardrails in place, so that in the rules and kind of rules of the road, to be able to kind of expand it to a way where it doesn't become disruptive in a way of, kind of disruptive destruction is really my thought, is where it really starts to kind of tear at society. And I think that if you look at like Meta, there's a ton of jobs there that are all focused around, security and, keeping things, or kind of establishing the right rules of the road that can govern, that this new technology and cutting edge technology. So that's from my perspective.
And I definitely agree. When we look at something like this, cybersecurity equals job security. That means more jobs will open up. Your job will be more secure. But keep in mind, as we, join the metaverse and we get new devices, IoT devices, they're going to be connected to the internet. They're going to need some sort of security, your network, especially as we move towards cryptocurrencies, NFTs, wherever we might hold this. It's going to need some certain type of security too. And a lot of that is a gray area, as we're not really in that space yet. Companies haven't migrated there yet. There's going to be new opportunities, new careers that come about. But most definitely, it's a very vague area at this moment.
Yeah. I would also just add on top of that, because you triggered something, ISO, is on like AI, artificial intelligence. There's going to be a lot of opportunities in the artificial intelligence space, where it's going to be, how do you program it in the right way? How do you make sure that somebody doesn't create something negative? Or, if folks, I'll date myself again, but the Terminator movie, where you have Skynet going on and kind of, running certain things. But how do you ensure that, the machines that are there are doing the right things and not the wrong things that could potentially harm society? So I think, programming things in a way where, you reduce the level of biases. I teach machine learning at a college as well, one of the classes I teach. And one of the big things is, we talk about the bias aspect, but how do you train the machines and teach the machines to be able to handle things correctly, and what are the right things they handle? So I think there's a lot of opportunity, in that from a cyber perspective, but also just in as you said, job protection, job security. You have a lot of opportunities there, but it's also, learning new things. I think that, as culture, as technology evolves, we have to evolve as well as the workforce. And I think, if you think you're going to be in security and it's just going to be the same job every single day in, day out, I can tell you, rest assured, it's not going to be, because my day changes. I'm in meetings a lot of the times because of my level, but we talk about different things almost every single day. And I think the big thing is, how do we make sure that we put the right guardrails, the right bumpers in place to make sure that, the car doesn't go off the track, as the saying goes. So I think continue to focus on those topics.
And I agree with Greg. Just to hop in it one more time, learning in this field is very important. I think that's a pro. You're going to learn. You're always learning. You're going to, it's a pro. You're always expanding your mind. However, that's a con too. You always have to be on top of things. You always have to learn. For example, at Huntress, I remember the VMware Log4 shell vulnerability. Man, I came into work that day. I didn't read the news, and everyone was talking about it. The whole company was on it. So it was on to me to actually go educate myself on the vulnerability and the topic at hand. See, one day you could be 2 years behind, basically. So you have to stay on top of that. You're constantly learning. But as I look back on it, there's so much I've learned in my time at Huntress. It's just like, you got to constantly expand and continue to expand. And that's the biggest pro and con, basically.
Awesome. Thank you. Really great insight on that. Ezra is asking, did you obtain any CompTIA certs prior to getting your first job in cyber?
I didn't. I was there before the certs were even existing, so I'm dating myself. But basically, I have gotten plenty of certs along my day. One of the things I did, I got my CISSP, my CISM, which are more kind of generalist security certs. But there's a lot of resources for you to take a look at. So a lot of technologies out there have their own university programs. So you don't always just need to go CompTIA. CompTIA is great. I'm not saying it's a bad certificate, because I think it's definitely gets a foot in the door. But if you're looking at different technologies, there's a lot of like free universities that you can go to. Like Splunk is a tool that we use a lot of. We use Tenable, we use Cisco. They all have free universities that you, if you basically Google it, they'll basically take you there. And there's free certs to get you set up, to get you kind of to hit the ground running. And then there's other additional ones that you can then go ahead and pay for once you get there. So.
And as for me, like I said before, I didn't have any certs before starting at Huntress. However, I do believe they're beneficial for sure. I personally believe you shouldn't wait to apply to a job until you get a cert. You should always be actively applying, but there's a lot of value in getting a cert. There's a lot. You got to really understand what side of cybersecurity or what's part of the industry you want to get in and which you're willing to invest in. And that's the biggest part, but I definitely recommend getting a cert for sure.
Yeah.
I see Max Rogers is dropping some certs at Huntress. He's our director of cybersecurity at Huntress. And see, those kind of certs, they're a lot cheaper than CompTIA and things along those lines. But this is more focused on our industry with network defense and with malware analysis and things like that. So when choosing a cert for sure, you definitely want to have it tailored to the side of industry that you want to get on, because you could also go to the offensive side and get certain pen test certs, ethical hacking cert, and it all depends.
Thank you so much for answering that question, because I think whenever I look at LinkedIn job posts, I always see the same certs coming over and over, and most of them begin with for the beginner levels with the CompTIA Security Plus, which is what everybody talks about in YouTube and LinkedIn, and so I think the trend is heading towards that direction. I think in terms of like beginner certs. But I understand that it's not necessary most of the time if you can show that your skills and showcase your work. Like I'm teaching myself Splunk and other platforms and independently. So just to get familiar with SOC analyst tools at the moment, as well as try hacking and all these courses I take. So
I think the one thing to do is look at the job description and see what are some of the tools that you might be using, and then go to their website to see did they have any free universities for some of the junior roles. So that you can come in and say, hey, like if there's a certain tool that they're using, exactly how that tool works, at least at a basic level, right? And once you get your foot in the door, then it's more of, okay, now I can go ahead and actually use the tool, and I can be successful in that tool. And then from there, the company will sponsor you to go ahead and actually get the certificates. So I would check the job descriptions out, use what those requirements are as a good kind of nugget of information for you to be able to kind of get some reconnaissance. So like if you're familiar with hacking, social engineering, engineering certain things, understand what's there and what's available to you, so you can shine as a candidate for potential job.
That's right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Question. I got one question. So Greg, if you had to start your roadmap to cybersecurity today, right now, like in our shoes, how would it differ from when you first started?
Today, I would say I have way more tools. I have way more tools to go ahead and get myself started. When I first started in security, I literally had to buy my own computer, and I'd have to go ahead and kind of install virtual machines, or virtual machines wouldn't even really exist at that point in time. But I would then have to go ahead and kind of build my own environment, my own lab environment. I remember one of my job interview questions one time was like, talk about your lab environment. And I had firewalls, I had routers, I had switches, I had servers, I had laptops all over the place. Nowadays, I'd probably do a couple of videos, probably pull down Kali and a couple of other different virtual machine tools, and I'd most likely be leveraging the cloud right now, because you can build all that for much cheaper than what I did to spend on my first lab, and use Amazon or Azure or Google or GCP to go ahead and actually build out my own lab, so I can start playing around. As I mentioned earlier, curiosity is one of the big things that I think if you're really interested in this field, learning it, understanding what's available to you, and the more you can put kind of knowledge around the concepts that are being talked about, the better off you're going to be. I mean, I've touched a lot of different roles in my career. I think a SOC analyst is a great opportunity to kind of get started. I think there, depending on if you're technical, like definitely a SOC or kind of a junior engineer is a good start. If you're not as technical, but you still like security and you have a good foundation of knowledge around cybersecurity, junior, kind of a junior risk analyst or a junior compliance analyst is good. those types of roles do exist. There's also a lot of companies do have like early career, early mentorship type of roles. So get into some of those where you might be on a rotational basis, because quite honestly, from a security perspective, you may not know what you like, or you might think you like something and you're like, I don't like this. So one of the things that that we do now is we have rotations. So like we have 12 different departments within security. So I cover 5 of them. One of my peers covers about 4 of them. And then I've got a peer that covers one department and another department. We do rotational programs. So they hop from like different roles every 8 to 9 months. And as part of that, they get to say, okay, this is what I like, what I don't like. And if there's a role that opens up and they did well in that role, it creates that door and that opportunity for you to be able to be in that role for a period of time. And a lot of companies are doing that because there's so many opportunities now. Like I said at the beginning of my talk, like I used to chase, malware around with a floppy disk and, and go ahead and remediate it. Don't need to do that as much anymore. I can push a button to go ahead and have things isolated and removed, pretty regularly. And I could do it all from wherever I am. Whereas back in the day, I had to be in the office and I had to connect to a server that was antiquated to go ahead and make sure that happened. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in that, and I know it's a kind of a loaded question, but I think I hope I kind of answered it in the way that you're looking for, because I think it's looking at where those opportunities exist and then really trying to target it, so to be able to kind of make that breakthrough into a career. And then for example, like you may start at engineering and say, hey, I like managing people, because that's another thing that I gravitate to, is like, how do I help mentor people, manage people, and lead people, and that's kind of where I am today. But that took time. My first 8 or 9 years was really focused on engineering and learning the craft, and then it became to how do I inspire, manage, and lead people.
Thank you. That you answered really well. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do want to be mindful of time. Isa actually has a presentation for us, but before I do that, I actually want to encourage our current fellows now, if you all are comfortable, just dropping your LinkedIn in the chat. So some of our applicants here, if they have questions about what the fellowship is like, they can go ahead and reach out to you. So you all could do that. And then to the people watching, definitely save some of those LinkedIns to reach out to them for any questions you may have. That being said, Isa, you can take it away.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and just share my screen. Sec. I'll make it quick for the sake of time. Let's see. So yeah, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, day in the life of a cyber threat operations analyst. Let's see what I got here. Well, I already went on my career roadmap. In 2020, I was working at a media company, record label for Revolt TV. I graduated in May 2020, and I really didn't kick off my career in cyberspace, IT, and cybersecurity until 2021. Not to say that I didn't have the idea and wasn't practicing and studying in 2020. However, I didn't get my first job until 2021 in IT. At that time, I was in IT at ADOS. I got an internship with New Jersey Homeland Security for their cyber threat and analysis intern. And that's really important too. If you could look out for internships, it's a really big way to get into certain companies and things like that, and to build experience. Offering your time for free is very big. Product support specialist at ClassLink, and then by September 2021, I was a threat ops analyst at Huntress. So I put this in here just to show you the differentiation. Red team, purple team, and blue team. Obviously, I'm part of the blue team with threat hunting. Red team, we don't have a red team yet at Huntress, but we do have our R&D, research and development team, and engineering, which I would say makes up more of our purple, if not blue team. And I put this here especially because this encompasses practically all of cybersecurity. We work together in cybersecurity. Our research and development team and our engineering team, something to also consider when you're trying to break into cybersecurity. Don't think one-track minded where I have to break in, I got to do incident response. We work together as a team. There's so much to learn here in this industry. Some background on Huntress. We're a managed detection response platform. And we really pride ourselves about being the cybersecurity for the 99%. Definitely cheaper than most of our competitors. And we offer 24-hour human threat hunting services. So around the clock services, we focus on persistent threat holes. There's this misconception, a hacker, breaks in and they take everything in that second, but truth be told, hackers, come in, they try to learn your network better than yourself. And that might take months, years, some time. We have ransom canaries. We work hand in hand with your antivirus, for managed antivirus detections. So we could learn more about what's going on behind the scenes. And we're fully remote. So I'm not sure what it's like to be in a threat ops center, but we're on Slack and it's pretty awesome there too. So to start off, a lot of the process at Huntress is automated. Like I said, shout out to our research and development team and our engineering. They play a huge part of Huntress and the product that's developed. And then there's us, the analysts. We offer a human perspective to what our detection automation does. So basically, you sign in. The biggest thing about being an analyst, there's always going to be something going on, but it's always about prioritizing, seeing what's the most important, what's the most critical, most severe. So this is something similar to what our dashboard would look like. We sign on, we have so many investigations to look at. And then basically around here, you'll see something come in. The detector picked this thing up. It looks like Mimikatz. And that's another thing, familiarize yourself with malware. But basically it would probably never be this easy, but it's labeled Mimikatz and we know it's dangerous. And we know the process that spawned it, PowerShell. This looks super suspicious. We see that it was quarantined, so it has some time it was picked up by the antivirus. So we see that it has some time. We have some time to investigate. A link to the MITRE framework, that's also important too. Things like that. So so the detection comes in, our system detects it. So it's our job as an analyst to actually go in and invest. And this is one of the biggest things in cybersecurity. And I think Greg touched on it before. You have to be a great researcher. He said he loves Google. That's literally the first place I'm going to start when I'm investigating, basically. I'm going to look on Google. Has, this been seen out in the wild before? Mimikatz, pretty big. Attack framework, it's on Sentinel-1. I see it on Virus Total. It's already known out there. So it might be easier to classify this this malware now that I, Google search the file name, basically. I'm going to search queries. I'm going to look in our database to see if we've seen it before. I'm going to search the binary, seeing if it's seen out in the wild. So that's a really solid part of investigating, and believe it or not. And that's a skill that I learned in IT, where it's like, we don't know all the answers, but Google probably does. So let's go and Google our answer, basically. But maybe sometimes it's not always that easy, but that's a big step. Something Huntress provides is their Rio agent, which is process insights. This gives a lot of information to what happened, how we could see a roadmap of what the process was, what spawned this executable. Like I said before, we're looking at PowerShell being executed, and that executes basically this Mimikatz file executable. And that's a big step. Well, you get to actually learn the processy, and you might have learned where it might have started, basically. It really gets to the root of things. Also, we drag it into our virtual machine. This is such a big thing. You need to be able to be comfortable in your virtual machine, download them offline. I recommend for malware analysis a Flare VM. And this is just, using a tool that's already pre-downloaded onto the VM, Flare VM, like Floss. And we could look at interesting strings. We see that none of this is readable. So that might be weird. Something to look into, investigating strings that way. But virtual machines also play a big part in investigating. So now that we know that it's Mimikatz, at my job, we're going to report it. We're going to draw out a whole report, offer remediation, step-by-step remediation steps, so the customer could get it off their computer, how to prevent it, look exactly where it is. Huntress, they provide one-click service. So in one click, we just handle it for you, basically. It's an automated service. If it's critical, if it's a ransomware attack, we're going to contact the customer, let them know, that one of your machines has been hit with ransomware. We also have the power to isolate that host machine from the network. That's super crucial, because we don't want it to spread without the network. It's Saturday, you might be at home, but your computer's on at work and you get hit. what are you going to do, right? So that's what we're here for as analysts, to make that tough decision. Like, hey, are we going to isolate this from the network and reach out to you, when you're not available, basically. And the biggest thing I learned in IT, which is, important in cybersecurity, throughout all of that, a whole incident happens. It's important to document and record what happened, because moving in the future, you don't want to go through all these steps again. For something like Mimikatz, the analysts before me, the researchers before me made it very easy to identify. It allows us to collaborate with other people in cybersecurity in our threat ops center. Talk to your research and development team, the engineering team, like, hey, can we create a detector for this so that it'll be easier? Look, this is exactly what happened. We went through process insights. It started with PowerShell. It's going to spawn this. This is the binary. This is what we're going to look for in the future. So this is what, our malware knowledge base will look like. We have call bolt shred up here. It makes things a lot easier in the future. Those are the big steps. So like I said, there's some terms to remember that I think personally that you need to know in cybersecurity. You need to be a great researcher and you need to be good at documenting. And when you highlight those kind of skills on your LinkedIn or in a job interview, I think those are super big, because a lot of your job could just be done with a Google search. And a lot of people don't know that in IT and cybersecurity. Like, what am I really looking at here? Google is going to be your best friend. Stack Overflow, like, they're going to be your best friend. And when you do things in your virtual lab, document them. Go on GitHub. When you do a CTF, go on GitHub to write up a report. Jobs will love to see that. They love to see that you're organized. Love to see that you record well. Put it on LinkedIn. You just finished a CTF competition. You finished this webinar. Say you enjoyed it on LinkedIn. They want to see you in this industry interacting with people around you. So research and document, big thing in cybersecurity. And any place in the cyberspace, whether it's IT or cybersecurity. Tools I recommend, in my space at least, Flare VM. Wireshark always seems to come up in every job that I have went to. Virus Total for investigating malware. Shodan. There's a list of tools you could use, but just try your best to, when you look at a job application, try to look for the tools that they're using. And definitely go watch a YouTube video about it. Go drag it into your VM, see playing with it. Like Greg said, it's all about curiosity. So you got to be curious about these tools. What do they do and how can they help you, in your job, basically. And I highly recommend CTFs, like Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, CTF Time, Trace Labs. They are a human global search party. That's a great place to get experience. You actually look for missing people out there using open source research. So definitely do those CTFs. They'll help you navigate the terminal, navigate a computer, and document them for sure that you did them, because jobs would definitely want to look for that. And to keep your motivation up, definitely tune into like podcasts, watch YouTube videos, go to DEF CON. I love Darknet Diaries. Personally, I got to give a shout out to them. When I was passionate about cybersecurity, I listened to their episodes on their podcast, and I was inspired. They taught you about the history of cybersecurity, certain hacker scenarios. I thought I was going to be a hacker, ethical or not, before I was like joining cybersecurity. I'm like, dang, they're just so awesome. Just to learn about their stories was huge for me, basically. So those are big steps for sure. So definitely research and document and get your feet wet and make sure you just write it all down, basically. And yeah, that's it. Connect with me on LinkedIn for sure. I'm happy to talk and connect when I have time. Definitely, I'm willing to give advice, but I definitely recommend if you did this webinar today, you definitely should post about it on LinkedIn and get the ball rolling and building out your, Greg talked about your reputation. It's just like your brand. You got to build that brand. It's like your resume on LinkedIn. It's a great place to be and continue to build that brand for sure. And it starts with connecting with me, I guess. So that's big. And that's it. I don't know if I spoke too fast. Got a lot of nervous energy, but.
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was really engaging too. So thank you for all that. That being said, thank you, Isa. Thank you, Greg, so much for joining us today and providing so much wonderful insight on cybersecurity, your experiences, and just advice and thoughts that you may want to share with everyone who is interested in this field and the Knowledge House here. With that being said, thank you all so much for joining us. I can stay on for about 5 more minutes in case anyone has any questions about the Knowledge House, but we will be opening office hours soon. So people can drop by weekly to ask any questions about our program or in the application process. A friendly reminder to everyone that our application does close May 31st. So make sure if you haven't already applied that you apply to our program. And then lastly, I'm going to share a link with you all. As you know, we're asking that we have people join these sessions. So I'm going to drop a link where you'll be completing a brief survey on our session today. So please make sure you do the survey. We'll be using that to also track people who have been attending our sessions. That being said, definitely make sure you take advantage of the LinkedIns that were dropped in the chat from Isa, Greg, all that, and the amazing resources. I will be pulling that chat soon. And I'll probably send a follow-up email probably towards the end of the week with all the resources that were shared. But I will send this survey again today in a follow-up email. With that being said, everyone have a good night. And thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.